Welcome to the Baseball Insiders Prospect Show. I am Adam Weinrib, joined as always by Fansided's prospect guru Eric Cole on a Tuesday at noon Eastern. The September call-ups occurred yesterday, September 1st, on a Monday, on a holiday Monday, because if there is one thing Major League Baseball respects, it's labor. So they all came on the day we take off. This kind of feels like a Monday, but it is a Tuesday, so that means it's a prospect show. We'll talk about the names that surprised us, what we expect, and whether any of them will change the calculus down this stretch. I know a lot of people watching Jonah Tong and Nolan McLean and wondering what it means for the Mets as they start to put some distance between themselves and the bottom of the wild card field, namely the Reds. But the Reds made a little bit of a momentum-turning move yesterday as well. So we'll see how we feel. Talk about risers and fallers from the last week of minor league action as we go into the final month of the final couple of weeks, in fact, of minor league action. So, of course, we'll be giving out some awards and recapping as the weeks go by. Check in for some winners in the days to come, and then maybe we'll figure out how we are going to attack the Arizona Fall League in the offseason. But for now, we've got September call-ups, big league relevant prospects, and Eric Cole is here. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. This has been kind of a fun few weeks because while September call-ups, like we certainly had some names that were pretty relevant to our interests, it's just been kind of a steady build of just more and more names. Like we have, obviously you mentioned Tong and McLean. We also had Bubba Chandler getting called up. We had Sammy Basayo getting called up. These are like big names that we've been kind of expecting for a while. And they weren't like traditionally true September call-ups, but they got called up pretty late in the year. And it's going to be a big deal to kind of for their teams. Is basically in some of their cases, like whether or not these young guys succeed or fail is going to determine how far they get in the postseason. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, Dylan Beavers in Baltimore. It's a funny situation in Baltimore right now because after all of the time that we spent hyping up their prospects, their imminent future, their long-range future, now we've had guys who have been begging to get promoted in Baltimore who've been on the roster for a while and haven't made much of an impact. Like Kobe Mayo, easy to forget. He's been up for 200 at-bats, and he is now a fringe member of the lineup. A lot of the learning curve in Baltimore has been steeper than most expected. Basayo obviously getting the extension that Adley Rutschman was maybe coveting. Things are shifting there. The Red Sox had it themselves, too, which I don't remember the last time I heard a divisional opponent say this about a team that, has their story is yet to be told. The Orioles aren't like dead DOA forever. And the Red Sox were like, yeah, we know, windows can close fast. We know we got to enjoy this while we still have it in Boston. It's like, what? You're making that? I mean, yeah.
A front office that has notoriously made new moves that exactly characterize just that, as opposed to just, tearing the team down repeatedly when it's good. It's not like we had any reason to think that they wouldn't do that.
No, we can save you guys, though. I mean, it is odd to watch all this post-mortem stuff on Baltimore, but at the same time, a guy like Mayo has been there floundering for a while. A guy like Jackson Holiday has given us 2 years, maybe has an adjusted ceiling. So, I'm glad that they gave Basayo both the call-up and the extension, and he has rewarded their faith early. But what an odd situation there. And plenty of new names have joined the fold across the league. Again, thank you for joining us. Noon Eastern time every Tuesday. That's how you know it's the Prospect Show. Plenty of fun season recaps coming up in the weeks to come. As I mentioned, you can join us on the Baseball Insiders with Robert Murray every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And he also does a private Q&A in our Discord on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. How do you get involved there? Join us. Hit the join button below this video. Sign up, become a member at either the Rumor Mill tier or the All-Star tier, and you can participate in that half-hour Q&A as well as give Robert and I and Eric shit between shows. Robert Murray, proud Eagles fan. Their season begins on Thursday. Robert will not be on the show tomorrow. I'll be going live with Sam Phelan, who you know from his coverage, Fansided MLB, Southside Showdown, plenty of other sites, as well as Survivor, of course. So please join us tomorrow to hang out with me and Sam. Robert will be back next week from his vacation. I just got back from a vacation. It is weird to go on vacation. Makes you feel weird when you come back. Subscribe to the Moonshot as well, our weekly baseball email newsletter where the Fansided MLB team, including the aforementioned Robert Murray, break down all the biggest stories in the big leagues with humor, insight, behind-the-scenes info. You can find Eric and I there. You can also find us on fansided.com/baseball-insiders, where Eric's supplementary columns of the Prospect Show go up, as well as some general weirdness for me and insider notes from Robert as we head towards the postseason. Those are only going to get more in-depth, and my stuff is only going to get weirder, probably. Okay, let's get to the September call-ups, and I want to focus on a few names that, again, non-traditional slate this year. A lot of the bigger names came up in mid-August. Some of them targeted my vacation for their arrival, and I will never forgive them. But we did have a few names come up yesterday who I would classify as a little bit more interesting than just the like what the Yankees did, where it's like, hey, we had some injured guys returning. We got to thicken out the depth. Here are some people you saw 4 months ago, and they're back. Plenty of teams went the boring route, but a few others gave us, and a few of these I didn't expect to see. Maybe I should have changed my expectations and been more receptive to the arrival of top prospects. I wouldn't say I was surprised that the Reds called up Sal Stewart. It took them honestly longer. I thought he'd be in that Bubba Chandler-Basayo category of welcome to the bigs in mid-August, but here he is, and his first game in Cincinnati was a pretty exciting win for the Reds, who are hanging on for dear life at the final, below the fold of that wild card race in the NL, in the 4 spot in a 3-team race. But thoughts on, I think I'm having a hard time contextualizing this in terms of the playoff race, especially given what the other 3 teams in the NL field look like right now. But what are you looking to see from Stewart now that they have given him the nod?
I'm with you. I just think that the Cincinnati kind of messed up in not calling him up early. They're 4 games out of a wild card spot right now, and you think that with some of the close games they've played, having a guy like Stewart as a plus hit tool and having him in that lineup that is kind of notoriously inconsistent and kind of has guys who can come and go in terms of how much they're producing, having a guy who consistently gets on base and who can, just puts the ball in play a whole bunch, doesn't strike out a lot, like it feels like that they should have made this move earlier. Now, that said, I think that Stewart does make them better. And I think that if the Mets, the Mets falter or any of these other teams in the wild card race, slip a little bit, the Reds could be there to kind of steal a spot. But I'm kind of with you in the sense that I think they're going to end up falling just short. But I still like having Stewart up. He's a guy that, again, just makes their lineup better, more complete. They have a lot of guys who hit 230. Maybe they run hard, maybe they try their best, but they're a little bit lacking in terms of tools. And they have guys like Ellie, who is loaded up with tools, but also can do things that either it looks like the best player in baseball or those things that make the fans, furious. So having a consistent performer who also has some carrying tools in Stewart is kind of a nice thing for Cincinnati to have kind of bridge the gap a bit.
Yeah, there was. I mean, the Mets and Yankees were on dueling collapse schedules in August for a while. So there was a window of opportunity for the Cincinnati Reds to go ahead and jump in there. Instead of being 4, they got it to 1, I believe. Maybe they were capped at 2. But now they're 4 out. Now they're in a cluster with the San Francisco Giants, who have homered in 15 straight games, I believe. So good for them. Getting in tune for probably for next year. But I guess we can't rule them out. If they're in that Reds bucket, and we can't rule them out this year either. But the Yankees found this off part of their schedule and did what they had to do with it, and have now moved, widened the gap a little bit between falling out of the playoff race and remaining in it. The Reds and Mets, similar situation. 4 games out is not dead, but 4 games out is a less realistic, reasonable goal at this point in the season with just over 20 games to go. And especially because the Mets have looked so great behind Jonah Tong and Nolan McLean. The offense has now partnered with the pitch. When teams that are talented are going poorly, you see defense doesn't align with pitching. A great start, and the bats go silent. The bats score 9, and the starting pitching doesn't show up. 3 errors made when the pitcher is excellent. It never lines up, and you manage to lose in all different ways. But now Tong and McLean look like 2 guys who aren't just helping steady the ship, but 2 guys who could participate and shift the postseason for the New York Mets. So I don't think I ever would have said over at any point over the past couple of weeks, oh yeah, the Mets are cooked. They're falling out of the postseason race. But now I would not only say they have cemented their spot, but I would say they could overtake the Padres for that second wild card. They're just 2 back, given the way the Padres have played against some teams they should be fattening up on lately. And Tong and McLean, for me, changed their playoff calculus. It's still hard to find a path for the Mets through the postseason, given the number of hurdles and really scary teams that they will be going up against to go far in October. But their chances have increased significantly with the emergence of these 2 players, and they should be carrying both of them on their October roster.
Yeah, I like both of them quite a bit. I'm a little bit higher on Tong than McLean, just being honest. I just think that McLean's more of kind of a collection of above average pitches versus someone who's going to have a pitch or kind of a profile that is going to be uniquely good at getting out big league hitters. But Tong, that delivery and just the qualities that his pitches have, I feel like until teams get more film on him, he's going to be very hard to deal with. Ultimately, again, I think that if the Mets do make a run this in the postseason, that they're going to need both of these guys doing something for them. Even if one of them gets moved to relief or long relief or whatever. Again, you need this sort of depth on your playoff roster to kind of like when your starter is bad in the third inning, you can't wait for him to figure it out, and you have to pull guys. And having a guy like a McLean or a Tong coming out of the bullpen would certainly be very valuable. I'm not going to say that they're both going to be doing, or either of them are going to be in that role, but that's something that could realistically happen in my mind. Again, I want to see, like, now that McLean's been up for a little while, Tong's been up, that people have seen him and kind of know what his pitches look like and how hitters are reacting to them. Maybe there's going to be a little bit of a change in how hitters are kind of responding to some of their stuff. And it's ultimately on these guys to be able to respond, because it's not like either one of these guys has like this 100-mile-an-hour fastball, wipeout, or a breaking ball stuff that even when you make mistakes, hitters can't hit it, right? They do rely a little bit on deception and sequencing and things like that. And big league hitters are really good at figuring that stuff out. So I like both of these guys. And I think you're right. It certainly makes the Mets more interesting as a playoff team, because before they came up, I mean, it just looked like the pitching staff was cooked, and they had some real issues, some holes in that lineup too, especially with some injuries that have been popping up. So I like them a lot, and I think that the Mets are certainly better now that they are up. But chasing down some of the big dogs in the National League is going to be pretty tough, even with those guys.
Yeah, and I've lived in New York long enough to know that all it takes is one dud start from either of these pitchers for the fans to turn on them somewhat and stop bragging about how they're impenetrable. So I'm a believer. Neither, though, is the kind of shutdown weapon in October like a K-Rod, where you're just like, this guy, this impossible man is going to enter throwing 99, 100, and I'm gonna the opposing team is gonna have no idea what to do with it. But I would definitely say that the Mets have significantly raised their. This is the best way to patch up holes, and I'm surprised it took David Stearns so long. But at the same time, he knew he had these quivers in his arsenal, and they're working.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the Mets have kind of solidified that spot in the NL. Behind the Phillies, weren't able to catch them early, so they kind of just almost like gave up on that goal. Just like, okay, we're just going to take one of these early wild card spots and see what best we can do with it. Maybe if they'd slid a little bit more. Again, they were in full collapse mode, like you said. Both of the New York teams were kind of doing their absolute best to fall out of the playoff picture altogether, but it seems like they righted the ship and everything's good to go now.
Yeah, it does feel that way. Now headed to the AL wildcard race, a couple of, again, bigger names, and maybe these weren't terribly surprising, but they stood out among the field yesterday because, again, so many other teams were just calling up quad A relievers and veteran major leaguer. The Texas Rangers September call-ups are going to help the Texas Rangers, but they went with Jake Berger and Chris Martin. It was a mockery of September call-ups. It was like, those are trade deadline deals. What are we doing? This is a prospect show. I demand young players. And thankfully, a couple other teams in the AL wildcard race gave them to us with the limited roster capital they had to work with. The Seattle Mariners, probably the most all-in call-up of September 1st, in Harry Ford, who I think a lot of us had pegged as someone who it was safe to say was going to be more likely to be on the move at the trade deadline than he was to be a meaningful member of the Mariners down the stretch, given the fact that the AL MVP plays his position. And yeah, I'm going to call him that until proven otherwise. In Seattle, I mean, you got a 50 home run catcher. It's hard to find room for a top prospect catcher, so you might as well deal from a position of strength. You've also extended Cal Raleigh. But here's Harry Ford. And again, major league teams can't afford to do the it's a tight playoff race. We want to get some prospects, some bench experience during big games. So we're going to use our 38th and 39th active roster spots on Derek Jeter. And he's just going to sit there and soak up what it means to be a winner. You've only got 2 spots to play with. If you're coming up, you better play or contribute. So I guess the Mariners expect Harry Ford to make a difference in a playoff race in which they are suddenly just 2 games up on a wild card spot in general. 2 games up in the loss column on falling out of the playoff field. And doesn't it always feel like the Mariners are in this exact position in early September where everyone has penciled them into the playoffs by July 18th, and then we all check and go, oh, the standings are actually very tight. So Harry Ford could make a real difference here. I'm still not sure how they're going to use him, though.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird fit, and when you kind of think about it, Carter Jensen with the Royals is kind of in the same boat. Like, are they just not? I mean, again, are they not going to play Salvi in Kansas City? Color me skeptical of that, but at the same time, I sort of get it. In the case of the Mariners, they need offense, and he's one of their best offensive players in the farm system. Maybe you give Lazaro Montes or a Colt Emerson or something like that more of an edge, but maybe you don't think those guys are quite ready yet, and you don't necessarily want to make the roster machinations work to get those guys plate appearances. But in the case of Ford, yes, Cal Raleigh is playing his position, and yes, Mitch Garver is also still kind of around, but they'd like to play both of those guys against left-handed pitching. And if you're doing that, then all of a sudden that third catcher is kind of important, because if something happens to one of those guys, you need to be able to slot someone in. If you need someone against, someone against righties to kind of give those guys a bit of a break, you have a guy like Ford who can come in. I sort of get it in the sense that we know what Ford is. He's a catching prospect who is a pretty good catcher, but has a plus hit tool. He's going to put the ball in play. He's going to be able to draw some walks. So if you need to pinch hit late in the game for a really light hitting hitter, which frankly Seattle doesn't have a shortage of in their lineup, you bring him in, and he gives you a better chance in a playoff game or in a tight game down the stretch here than some of the other options would necessarily. So again, I understand the move, and again, I understand it almost more than the Royals move to bring up Jensen, just because I don't think the Royals. I understand they're technically in it, but I am a little bit wary that they have much of a chance, and I think it's less likely that he'll get actual playing time. But at the same time, giving Perez, some time, to himself and to be able to heal up and be refreshed certainly makes some amount of sense to me.
Yeah, the Jensen shuffle is interesting. It almost does feel like that classic head nod of, we're playing competitive games down the stretch. We want you to experience baseball at the K so that next year we can give you more of a shot. But again, that means that the Salvador Perez end of career transition program is underway in some capacity. I always go back and forth struggling between which of these clustered teams at the bottom of the wild card race do I think has the best chance. They all have a limited chance at this point of getting above the fold. And I would have said KC a week ago. I would have said Texas 2 weeks ago, undoubtedly. But then Nathan Eovaldi goes down, and their pitching staff looks a little bit less intimidating, but still intimidating. It still has Jacob deGrom. They've still won 6 in a row. I think I would still give the nod to Texas. I feel like there's more explosive. We're on the edge of NFL season. There are more explosive plays in Texas than there are in Kansas City and Cleveland. But you're right. It is still, I think, we would be surprised if any of the 3 teams in the American League playoff field dropped out at this point in time. Kudos to the Mariners for ensuring themselves. Kudos to the Royals for playing ball here. George Valera comes up to Cleveland. They're also playing ball. They had 2 scrappy wins over the Mariners last week in a home series at Progressive. Which of those teams do you feel like you do have to keep an eye? I wouldn't be stunned if the AL playoff field had a shakeup. The Yankees are at the top. If the Yankees were a little bit closer to the bottom of it, given this impossible stretch they have upcoming for 12 games, it would be easier to project a shakeup. They have a little distance between themselves and the M's. The M's, I feel like, are the ones I don't totally have faith in right now, but I do think with a head start, they will finish ahead of the Royals, Rangers, and Guardians at this point in time. But do you have that feels like where you're at too?
I think so, in the sense that when they already have they have some games in hand to play with. And more importantly, that starting pitching staff is still really good. They're going to be in a bunch of really close games. They don't have to necessarily score 6 runs to win. When you have a guy like Cal Raleigh, when you have, Julio Rodriguez has not been the guy that we thought he was going to be when he first got called up, but he's still really dangerous. And you have some other dangerous hitters in the lineup. I just don't think Eugenio Suarez is going to be hitting 150 or whatever he's doing the rest of the season either. So I think they're going to win enough of these close games to get in. And then you have to deal with that pitching staff in the postseason, which I'm reasonably certain that no team in the American League wants to deal with. So in terms of consistency, when you have that kind of starting pitching staff, that's who I go for. But I wouldn't be surprised if like Texas is a very good baseball team. They won a World Series not that long ago. And if they go on a run, no one wants to go against Corey Seager in the playoffs. They just don't. You know what I mean? And if you give Jacob deGrom a chance to start in a series, then all of a sudden they're a very tough matchup, especially early on in the playoffs. So again, I wouldn't be shocked with you that there's something could happen, but for right now, my money's on Seattle.
Yeah, early 2026 prediction. I do think the Rangers load up behind Skip Schumacher in free agency, and we have to really reckon with them next year. But we will see. Getting 12 steps ahead there. And I don't know why I did that, but you know what? Sometimes I just say stuff. You can't stop me from saying stuff. It's illegal to stop me from saying stuff. Let's dive back into the risers and fallers from the last week of minor league action. We've talked enough about the major leagues. Enough, I say. It's time to go back to the minors and first talk about the players who had hot weeks and deserve to close out their years strong. And these are Eric, I don't want to tip our hands. We have some big plans around one of these names in the riser section. I think, again, unsurprising. Probably I'll have to tally it up at the end of the year. I think one of these guys is probably set the record for Baseball Insider's Prospect Show mentions in the hot column rather than the not column.
And I'm not going to apologize for it whatsoever. Frankly, I'm thinking about just trying to do some investment in terms of what Connor Griffin's
I just didn't want to blow up your spot and our spot. There's some balls in motion here.
And, more importantly, it's not like I'm the only one that's noticed that Connor Griffin's really good at baseball and people are trying to kind of, get in on that hype train. Look, he just got promoted to Double-A, has 19 home runs and 64 stolen bases this year, which is objectively insane. You would think that he would struggle a little bit at Double-A. Just, again, you're doing against more advanced pitchers. He's been better at Double-A. And last week he went 8 for 23 with 3 home runs. The guy is just objectively insane. Now, if he played for any other organization in baseball, I would say that he was playing so well that I think he would be playing his way into consideration for a call-up next season. He's been that good and that dominant. Because he plays for the Pirates, I think it's more likely that they'll hold him down as long as humanly possible.
Correct.
They seem to just like to, hang on to players as shiny things before we have to pay them, even though you're just letting them run away. But at the same time, I like what Connor Griffin's doing a lot. I think that he's a name to really keep an eye on. It's not just the numbers. It's the physical skill set in terms of what he can do on a baseball field, which is literally anything. I would not be shocked if they tried him out at third base or something and he ended up being really good over there. I think he can play all 3 outfield positions. I think he's got a cannon for an arm. He can run. He draws walks, hits for power, hits for average. He does everything you want a guy to do. Is he a lock to do that in the major leagues? No, but I really want to find out what he's going to do it. And again, really good week last week. A couple other names I'm going to mention here. Eli Willits. Number 1 overall pick, a little bit of a surprise there, but at the same time, everyone really did like him when he was drafted, and he's certainly showing out. Like amongst all most of these other top 10 picks haven't even played it all this year. And here's a nice high school kid who's already in pro ball, and he has an 850 OPS in his first 10 games. Again, hasn't hit home runs yet, but he's been playing very, very well considering his age. And lastly, I'm going to show my homerism a little bit here. Cam Caminiti, I think, deserves a little bit more mention. He hasn't. Because his overall numbers, he has a 3 ERA this year, and there's been so many other big time pitching performances this year that have guys who've rocketed all the way up to AAA. He's been overlooked a little bit because he had dealt with an arm injury early in the season, got a slow start. But again, he has a 2-something ERA this year down at Low A. And last week, 6 innings, 1 earned run, 9 strikeouts, and it's starting to become a trend that he's missing a lot of bats down there at High A or Low A rather. I think he's a guy who could move quickly next year, assuming that they feel good about how his load was managed this year. And after that, he could be a guy who we're kind of seeing climb up the rankings next year.
Braves finally did what we asked them to for September as well, calling up Hayden Harris. So, again, relief aces don't get the love they probably deserve on shows like this one, but that's why we get to control shows like this one, and we get to talk about Hayden Harris. Still waiting on J.R. Ritchie, though. I would like to see, and I know you would like to see, if the Braves are going to give innings, yes. If the Braves are just desperately going to glom together innings, then they should probably be doing it from the top end of their farm system rather than signing every available starting pitcher known to man like Eric Fetty. And then they don't go ahead and grab Walker Buehler. A playoff team gives him a chance. Instead, they call up Harris, and maybe there's more coming in Atlanta. It would be nice.
It would. This is not a team that, especially under this front office, likes to do the last month call-ups. I think they just would prefer to give those guys a break, but they're also not afraid to start them right out of spring training either. We've seen that happen a few times. I really thought that they would give J.R. Ritchie a chance, but since he hasn't been called up yet, I'm pretty skeptical that'll happen unless there's an injury. And unfortunately, the below AAA, the seasons are ending in the next week, right? And so the longer you wait, the longer it's likely these guys have just been sitting, especially the guys at Double-A, the guys are just going to be sitting around doing nothing, and they're not going to be warm or ready to kind of come back in. So it's either the AAA guys or bust. And in the case of J.R. Ritchie, I kind of think that if they were going to make that move, they're going to make it already, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, agreed. And rest up, stay refreshed for next year to get a shot coming out of the gate, because, again, that is how Atlanta works. We'll close on a sour note. Guys that absolutely suck. Irredeemable baseball players? No. The top tier of names, just players who've struggled over the past week, including some struggles at the major league level, and someone we thought we'd be spotlighting on a September call-up special, and in fact are giving them the wrong kind of spotlight here.
Yeah, again, these are all guys I still like a lot, but they have been, in their own ways, all kind of inconsistent to a certain extent. First, we have Sebastian Walcott. It's a guy who's a top 5 prospect in baseball. Again, this is a guy who's at AA at the age of 19. I'm not going to kill him too much, right? And his numbers have been pretty mediocre this year, but the way he's arrived at those has been kind of odd. He'll have like 2 bad games, 1 good game, 3 bad games, 2 good games. And it's just, you can't seem to string together much in the way of success, but everyone that you talk to among scouts love this kid and what he could bring. I hope that the Rangers don't just keep pushing him, because he has not had true success at any level he's been at. He's just been better than a kid his age should have been at a level. Keep him at AA to start next year. See if he's hitting the cover off the ball. If he does that, then we can start having a conversation about AAA, possibly a call up to the big leagues. I just don't. I do worry that he has kind of been pushed so aggressively in a lot of ways that it hasn't been great for him. Classic case, he had 1 good game last week, but he only had 1 hit the rest of the week. And again, that's from a top prospect. You'd think he would have done a little bit better than that. Andrew Painter's another name we've talked about as a potential September call-up. And again, both of us, I think, are a little bit surprised he hadn't played his way into a call-up before this September call-up discussion, because he was one of the top prospects in baseball. Yes, he was coming off the injury, but you just thought he would be in that conversation a little bit quicker, especially for a team like the Phillies, who really could use the pitching depth. Unfortunately, when he was kind of, I think, playing for that September call-up consideration, not a great start last week. Went 6 innings, which is good, but also got cooked for 6 runs. Wasn't particularly good overall. Hopefully that's not the end of things for him. And then Alex Freeland gets called up to the Dodgers again. Has really struggled to find consistency at the plate. Has 27 games up in the big leagues right now. Is hitting .208, 653 OPS, and there's a lot of strikeouts. He just doesn't look ready. He looks overmatched by pitchers. He's getting outthought, and the sequencing of pitches is clearly not something he's prepared for. It's not a knock on him. I still think he's going to end up being a great player, or at least a good everyday regular. But ultimately, again, not the best week or really the best month for Freeland.
And he's in a tough spot because I don't have enough evidence to declare either way. But if he just ends up being an above average regular in Los Angeles with the Dodgers, I mean, we call that the Gavin Lux zone. They're looking for excuses to upgrade from the moment you've proved that is your ceiling. So we'll see. Best of luck to Alex Freeland. I'm glad they gave him this chance and runway. Now is a good time. But so far, the returns have not matched the investment, and we're going to have to talk about his future in the offseason. But we're going to stick on this show every Tuesday until the regular season ends, and then through the offseason, noon Eastern time, we will be back next Tuesday to, again, figure out what to make of the minor league season and potential shuffles at the next level. Maybe we'll even get another pedigreed name. Maybe Painter gets a shot, but we probably are done with big league call-ups of note for the year. We think, but we'll there's no way to find out other than scouring Twitter for news, and B, joining us on the show next week, where we'll talk out everything that changed between this one and next, noon Eastern, the Baseball Insiders Wednesdays at 3 Eastern, private Q&A in the Discord. Just hit that join button below the show. 3 Eastern on Thursdays at the Rumor Mill tier, the All-Star tier. We will see you there. You can bug us on the Discord. You can subscribe to the Moonshot, where Eric and I and Robert Murray all write and respond to prompts about the week that was in Major League and Minor League Baseball. And fansided.com/baseball-insiders for more of our content specifically, and Eric column accompanying today's show. Until next time, we appreciate everyone who joined us today. Eric, go ahead and save up some of that Connor Griffin money. We're a week out from Topps Pro debut, and then another couple of weeks from Bowman Chrome. So it's not
Topps Tier 1's coming out too. It's another product that I kind of like messing around with from time to time. We'll see what ends up happening. It's going to be kind of a tough month financially for me. I'm gonna have to probably talk to my wife a little bit about some expenditures that might need to happen. But ultimately, again, that's kind of half the fun with doing a lot of stuff with minor leagues, is that you can kind of see who the future is going to be, and then hopefully take advantage of it if you can.
Hopefully. And if you're joining this show and you're trying to make an investment in your baseball card futures, this is not a bad place to be. Eric and I like talking collectibles, and this is a nice on-ramp to that kind of discussion. So until next time, we will see you here on the Baseball Insiders Prospect Show, noon on Tuesdays. Take care, everybody.